K.W. Krieger presents The Obscure Dossier, Episode 8, Beneath Forgotten Sands. Declassified statement of Dr. Amelia Crowley, former field archaeologist for the British Museum, regarding the excavation of an unrecorded tomb near Dahshur, Egypt, in November 1998. Statement given June 21st, 2001. Begin statement. I suppose it started long before the tomb. People think archaeologists are born adventurers, that we grow up swinging from ropes or dusting off golden idols in secret chambers. The truth is usually less glamorous. I spent most of my 20s buried in crumbling archives, translating old Egyptian funerary texts and fighting for grant money. My excitement came from a well-preserved cartoon or a particularly obscure mention of a temple that no longer exists. By the time I turned 32, I'd published 2 papers that were well received, but quietly so. Nothing groundbreaking, nothing front page. There's a kind of bitterness that creeps in when you realize your life's work may never matter to anyone but 5 other specialists in your field. I didn't want to be buried in footnotes. I wanted to find something. Something no one had touched for millennia. So when the Cairo Museum offered me a position on Dr. Rafik Marone's expedition, I said yes before they finished asking. I knew of Marone by reputation. Charismatic, sharp, a little erratic. The kind of academic who veered too close to pseudoscience for institutional comfort, but kept delivering just enough real results to stay relevant. Some called him a visionary, others a liability. I met him in the airport lounge in Cairo. Tall, dark jacket over a wrinkled shirt, eyes bloodshot from jet lag or something stronger. He greeted me with a half smile and a leather-bound notebook that he refused to let out of his sight. He said he'd found something, a location omitted from the dynastic record. Not a king's tomb, he insisted. Not royal, not common, something else entirely. Marone was obsessed with the concept of erased memory in ancient Egypt. He believed some tombs were deliberately excluded from history, not just forgotten, but scrubbed as if the names buried there were too dangerous to remember. The gods we erased, he once said to me over coffee, are often the ones that still listen. The team was small. That's how he liked it. Just 6 of us. Myself, Mahmoud, a young Egyptian student from Giza who handled field logistics, Eliza Vaughan, our epigrapher and skeptic in residence, and 2 local laborers we hired from a nearby village whose name I won't give out of respect for their families, and Marone. We arrived on site the first week of November. A cluster of supply tents, folding tables, crates of equipment half buried in sand. The trench had already been started by the advance crew, a shallow grid laid over the western slope of the plateau, but 2 kilometers west of the Red Pyramid, satellite imagery had shown anomalies in the bedrock. Marone was convinced it was a buried structure, unmapped, possibly sealed since the 18th dynasty. Eliza wasn't convinced. She'd worked digs from Luxor to Amarna and had little patience for what she called Marone's ghost chasing. She kept asking for context, inscriptional leads, any cartographic records. Marone deflected, always pointing back to his notebook. I remember she asked once, "Do you even have a plan?" He just smiled. Plans are for things we've already named. Despite everything that came later, I think he truly believed he was on the brink of something profound. We found the tomb on the 5th day. It wasn't an accident exactly, but it wasn't where it should have been. The trench grid had led us toward bedrock anomalies, what we thought were signs of an unfinished burial shaft or a collapsed chamber. But Morone kept pushing the team eastward, beyond the survey boundary, beyond where the satellite data made any sense. He insisted there was something, some alignment, some pattern no one else could see. He'd spend hours pacing the sand in tight circles, tracing something with his finger in the air, muttering old phrases under his breath. At night, I'd hear him scribbling furiously into that damn notebook by lantern light. It was Mahmoud who struck stone first, just before dusk. We were expanding a shallow depression when his pick hit something hollow, a soft clack like knocking against the lid of a box. At first, we thought it was a false floor, maybe a decayed chamber ceiling. But as we brushed away the sand, it became clear we found an entrance. A slab door, limestone, engraved but badly weathered. No visible cartoo, no prayers, no protective seals, just a single carved line of hieroglyphs across the lintel, shallow and hard to read. Eliza traced it with a brush, frowning. It's not standard formula, not even religious. It says, "They must not look away." No one knew what that meant. We camped there that night. Morone insisted on waiting until dawn to open the door. To witness properly, he said, whatever that meant. I barely slept, not out of fear, not yet, just anticipation, that terrible pressure in your chest when you know your life is about to pivot around a single moment. At first light, we broke the seal. The slab door shifted open with reluctant weight, stone grinding against stone, slow and loud, like the tomb was protesting after centuries of silence. The air that rolled out was dense and heavy, stale with time, thick with dust and stone and the bitter tang of minerals. It didn't smell like death, exactly. There was no rot, no decay, but there was something deeply unnatural about it. It felt ancient, preserved, as though it hadn't been touched since the moment it was sealed. A breath held for thousands of years. We descended into the darkness by torchlight. The passage sloped downward at a steady angle, maybe 20 meters in. Walls closed and undecorated, bare bedrock, chisel smooth. No cartoons, no funerary art, not even the usual invocations to the gods, just cold stone and silence. Then the chamber. 15 feet square, cut with remarkable precision. No columns, no alcoves, but this time there was a sarcophagus, set dead center in the room. It was made of dark granite, lid intact but unadorned, no name, no glyphs, just smooth, cold stone. Flanking it on opposite sides of the chamber sat the idols. They were positioned perfectly, directly facing each other, no more than 3 feet apart, carved from black basalt. Each sat on a square pedestal, back straight, front limbs neatly folded. They resembled ceremonial animals, one like a stylized jackal, the other a falcon, but neither fit cleanly into the usual divine iconography. Too abstract. The features too long, too lean. The jackal had an almost crocodilian curve to its snout. The falcon's wings didn't fold naturally, but curled forward, as if reaching toward the center of the room, as if reaching for the sarcophagus. Their eyes were the most unsettling feature. Large, inlaid with obsidian and silver. They caught the light and fractured it strangely, shimmering with a faint gleam that didn't quite move with our torches. It was like staring into something reflective that wasn't reflecting you. They were locked in a gaze, not just placed, but aligned, purposeful, exact. Eliza broke the silence first. "It's a ritual arrangement," she said, crouching beside the jackal. "Guardian figures, maybe? Or a symbolic confrontation, but this doesn't follow anything I've seen before." Maroon didn't respond. He was already sketching, wide-eyed, low voice, and fast as he muttered into the pages of his notebook. He circled the idol several times, pausing only to peer between them, through their line of sight toward the sarcophagus. Then he laughed, quiet at first, then louder, like someone just realized the punchline to a joke buried under centuries of dust. "It's them," he said. "This is the place. They must not look away." He gestured between the two idols. "They're locked," he whispered, maintaining the gaze, not symbolic, functional, a binding, a preservation of balance. If they stop looking, if one turns, something breaks. It sounded mad, but there was a weight to it. Like, he didn't come to that conclusion, he recognized it. Like, the pieces had been waiting in his mind, scattered until this moment put them in order. I'll admit, I was captivated, we all were. Even Eliza, though she tried to hide it. She wanted to rotate one of the idols, get a better viewing angle. She said Moron was reluctant, but not fearful. Not yet. He told her to hold off until we had proper diagrams and lighting. He was protective, not panicked. I didn't question it then. None of us did. We should have. We began cataloguing the chamber the following morning. Marone assigned roles. Eliza and I would document the walls and sarcophagus, Mohammed handled supply rotation and notes, and the two local laborers, brothers I believe, were tasked with bringing in lighting equipment and setting up the tripod scanners. I never knew their full names. They spoke only limited Arabic, mostly a local dialect, and stuck close to each other, always working in tandem. One was slightly older, taller, maybe in his late 30s. The younger one was wiry, no more than 25. I'd see them praying in the early morning, murmuring quietly over worn prayer beads. They were good men, steady, careful. I remember that. It just happened just before noon. We'd stepped outside briefly. Eliza had complained of the dust in the passageway, and Marone wanted to photograph the glyph above the entrance in natural light. I was only gone 10 minutes. When we came back down, one of the laborers was visible. The older brother stood frozen at the threshold of the chamber, pale, lips pressed tight, eyes wide with something between fear and disbelief. The younger one was kneeling over the fallen idol. It had been the jackal. Knocked clean off the pedestal, lying on its side, its head cracked but intact, obsidian eyes still glinting through a new spiderweb of fractures. The floodlight tripod was tipped nearby, one leg half collapsed, suggesting the obvious. One of them had been carrying it in, slipped on the uneven stone and collided with the pedestal. Accidents happen on digs. Things fall, people get injured. That's part of the work, but this felt wrong immediately. The younger man didn't speak. He didn't move either. Not at first. He just knelt, cradling the idol in both hands like it was a wounded child. His head tilted slightly, his gaze locked on its face. Not panicked, not guilty, just entranced. We called out to him, first the older brother, then Mahmoud, then all of us. Nothing. Not a blink, not a twitch. He just stared into the statue's fractured silver eyes. Then his face began to change. His lips parted slowly into a smile, but it didn't stop. The muscles in his cheeks pulled unnaturally, rising too high, skin stretching as if something inside him didn't quite understand how a face was meant to work. His jaw twitched, unhinged slightly. The smile kept growing, and then he screamed. He dropped the idol and lunged backward, shrieking like a man caught in fire, hands flying up to his face, not to shield it, but to tear. His fingers raked at his skin, dragging deep red lines from temple to chin. Blood boomed beneath his nails. He thrashed onto his back, digging his thumbs into the corners of his eyes, trying to rip them out. Marbod and I rushed him. I remember the blood, hot and slick, and the way he kept repeating a single phrase in a voice that sounded like it had been dragged up from the bottom of a well. She sees me. She sees me. She sees me. He didn't fight us, not really. His body kept moving, spasming like it was reacting to something he couldn't get out from under. Mahmud restrained him while the older brother whispered frantically over him, brushing the blood from his face, cradling his head in his hands. We carried him up and out of the tomb into the sun. He stopped screaming eventually, but his eyes never closed. He stared at the sky like it meant to judge him. That night he whispered again, quiet, steady, trance-like, "She sees me. She sees me. She sees me." The older brother took him home before sunrise. I offered to contact a hospital in Cairo, pay for travel, medicine, anything, but he refused. He wouldn't even take his wages. Before they left, I asked, carefully, what he thought had happened. He didn't look at me when he answered, just pulled the scarf higher around his face and stared back at the desert. He said, "There are names in this sand that should not be spoken. You found one, and now it remembers you." Then they were gone. The mood on the dig changed after that. We tried to keep working, cataloging, measuring, sketching, but there was a quietness in all of it, like we were trying not to disturb something sleeping just beneath the surface. Marin was the first to rationalize. Stress reaction, he said. Heat, dehydration, cultural superstition. He clung to it, repeating it like a mantra whenever anyone as so much as hesitated near the idols. Eliza didn't say much, but I could tell she wasn't convinced. She avoided looking at the jackal entirely. The cracked idol had been placed back on its pedestal, carefully rotated so its eyes pointed just slightly off-center, as if no one wanted to make the mistake of aligning them perfectly again. I suggested we seal the tomb and reevaluate, pause the excavation. Marone refused. He said the site was too significant, too pure. Untouched ritual context, he called it. It's trying to show us something. But what exactly, he wouldn't say. That night, I caught him in the chamber alone, sitting cross-legged between the idols, notebook in his lap, just staring, watching them, watching through them. He didn't speak when I approached, just scribbled something furiously, then closed the book and walked past me without a word. He hadn't slept. You could see it in his face, the tremble around his mouth, the too sharp focus in his eyes. He was burning through himself to understand something the rest of us hadn't even agreed was real. Then came the second incident. It was Eliza, 3 nights after the first. We'd all retired early, trying to get ahead of the heat the next day. I remember waking to the sound of something dragging across stone. At first I thought it was wind. The tents sometimes caught and snapped in the breeze, but this was different. slower, heavier, like something being pulled by hand. I grabbed my torch and stepped outside. Eliza was gone. Her bedroll was half unzipped, boots missing, lantern still burning. I shouted her name, checked the supply tent, the perimeter, nothing. The only place left was the tomb. I found her halfway down the passage. She was barefoot, pale, moving stiffly like her limbs were being directed by something outside of her. Her eyes were open but glassy, unfocused. She didn't respond to my voice, not even when I grabbed her by the shoulder. She kept walking down into the chamber. I followed. She stepped between the idols, into the narrow corridor of their gaze. The air felt wrong again, still, but heavy. Like the chamber was full of breath that wasn't ours. She turned to the sarcophagus, then she laughed. It was a small sound, barely audible, but it didn't sound like her. It didn't even sound human. More like something mimicking a laugh, just slightly out of sync. She placed her hands on the lid and began to push. That finally broke me out of it. I lunged forward, yanked her back. She struggled at first, then collapsed in my arms, shaking, eyes wide with some mix of confusion and terror. She didn't remember leaving the tent, didn't know why she was in the tomb, but she kept repeating one phrase over and over. "It's not dead. It's waiting." I got her out of there. We both slept in the Jeep that night. Doors locked, headlights pointed toward the entrance. The next morning, Murren was already in the tomb again. He hadn't left, as far as I could tell. I asked him, demanded that we shut the site down, call in the university, bring in the Antiquities Ministry, anything. He didn't respond. He just said quietly, "I think I know what it wants." That was when I decided to leave. I started packing that afternoon, but not before I took one last look inside the chamber, just to be sure I wasn't going mad. I didn't leave right away. Something stopped me. Maybe guilt, maybe fear. Maybe I needed to see how far it would go. Or maybe I already knew it was too late to run. It was the following evening when Marone made his mistake. I hadn't seen him come out of the tomb all day. His water bottle sat untouched near the tent flap, sweating in the sun. I waited until nightfall, then went down myself, quietly, torchlight low, trying not to spook him. He was in the chamber again, of course, kneeling beside the sarcophagus, both hands pressed against its carved stone lid. He didn't hear me enter. His voice was low, hoarse from disuse or dehydration, I couldn't tell. "I've been patient," he muttered. "I've listened, I've watched. I gave you the blood, I gave you the silence." Then, with a sharp inhale, he pushed. The lid groaned, resisted, then slid aside. I held my breath. Inside was dust. No wrappings, no bones, no trace of a body, just ancient emptiness, disturbed by the motion of the lid and years of stillness breaking. Marone stared. He whispered, "No," and then louder, "No." He looked lost, for the first time in days, hollow, like a child who'd been promised something unimaginable and found only dust. And then he screamed. A raw, furious sound. Rage, confusion, betrayal. He grabbed his notebook, the one he'd filled with sketches and translations, and hurled it across the chamber. It struck the second idol, the hawk-headed one, and knocked it clean off its pedestal. I shouted. It was too late. It landed hard, bouncing once on the stone before coming to a rest face up in the dust, eyes gleaming silver even in the half-light. Marone froze. He staggered forward, muttering to himself, and gathered the hawk idol in both hands. Then, seeing the jackal still on its pedestal, he picked that one up too, one in each hand like weights balancing on a scale. I stepped toward him, but he didn't hear me. His breathing had gone shallow. His eyes darted between the two figures. And then he did it. He looked into their eyes. I don't know how to describe what I saw next. There was a moment, just a second, when his entire body seemed to tense, like something was filling him up too quickly. His eyes widened, lips parting in something like awe or agony. Then his face twisted. He dropped to his knees and screamed, a sound I can still hear in my sleep. He dropped the idols, clutching his head, raking his nails down his face. And then he started to dig. With both hands, with frantic force, he gouged at his eyes, grunting through clenched teeth, tears and blood streaming down his cheeks as he tried to erase whatever he'd seen. I moved to stop him, but he stopped suddenly. He was breathing hard, his hands dropped to his lap. Blood ran down his wrists. He looked up at me, and I saw it in his eyes, or what was left of them. Nothing. Not recognition, not pain, not horror, just emptiness. He blinked slowly and said, "Where am I?" His voice was small, fragile, like someone waking up from anesthesia. He looked around at the tomb, the sarcophagus, the shattered idols, the blood on his hands, and said, "Did I fall?" That was the last thing he ever said to me. We airlifted him out 2 days later. I told the officials he'd suffered heat stroke and a breakdown from isolation. It wasn't entirely untrue, but he never recovered. His name, his work, even language itself, gone. He didn't know who he was. He didn't know me. As far as I know, he's still in a care facility in Giza, staring out windows, smiling at nothing. The idols were confiscated, the site was sealed. But sometimes I wonder if they're still looking at each other. If someone, somewhere, will make the mistake of separating them again. And what will be waiting on the other side of that gaze? Statement ends. Dr. Amelia Crowley submitted this account anonymously through an encrypted USB drive addressed directly to the Institute's Artifact Acquisitions Desk. No return address, no accompanying documentation. It was accompanied only by a single photograph, an old Polaroid, badly faded, showing what appears to be the interior of an Egyptian tomb. 2 statues, both weathered but intact, can be seen faintly in the background. The statues appear to face each other. The image has since been filed as Artifact 786-11-B. Attempts to corroborate the account have been difficult. There is no record of an Amelia Crowley currently attached to any major university archaeology department, though older dig records from the late 1990s list a Dr. A. Crowley as a junior team member on an aborted excavation project near Luxor. The expedition was allegedly terminated due to unforeseen structural instability, though no specific incident is listed in the British Museum's archive logs. As for Dr. Marone, I found no death certificate. However, a private mental health facility outside of Giza does house an anonymous foreign patient admitted in the late 2000s. Early 40s, male, with profound global amnesia and total ocular trauma. The attending physician's notes state that the man frequently murmurs in broken Arabic and French, most often a single repeated phrase. I saw her face, and she saw me. It is unclear whether this refers to either of the statues or something else. The mention of "she sees me" is, of course, consistent with other accounts tied to the distortion of gaze-related phenomena. The transformation of the victim's face into a grotesque smile prior to violence is also suggestive of externally imposed influence or compulsion. The loss of memory, however, is atypical, though perhaps not unprecedented. A final note, the two idols described, Jackal and Hawk, do not correspond exactly to any known Egyptian deity pairings in terms of positioning or ritual significance. However, there are scattered apocryphal mentions of guardian pairs, statues intended to balance or bind something by looking at one another. If that gaze is broken, what exactly is unbound remains unclear. Until more data becomes available, this account has been marked as unverified and placed under internal review. Anomaly code H-027 Zeta. Classification: object-bound anomaly. Status: active/sentient. Priority: high. Additional note: I've done further investigation into the mysterious typewriter that arrived, and it has been positively identified as the same artifact recorded under file 1942-FR/0112. Since confirming the match, the typewriter has been relocated to the Institute's secure artifact vault, under strict surveillance. No direct contact is permitted. It is only observed remotely in the event it ever attempts to communicate again. And it has. During routine observation, the typewriter produced a single new line. "He watches still. The gaze follows. Do you see him now?" There was no pressure on the keys, no sound. The message simply appeared, slowly, one character at a time. We still don't understand how the typewriter is able to produce messages without physical interaction. The reference to a gaze, to him, is troubling, especially in light of what was uncovered in the Egyptian tomb. The link between these cases may be deeper than what we first assumed. I'll be reviewing file 786-11-B alongside 1942-FR/0112 to determine if the typewriter is merely echoing the effects of the idols, or if it's part of something older. End recording. The Obscura Dossier is a podcast created by K.W. Krieger, licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 4.0 international license. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, drop a comment, and subscribe. And as always, until next time.